Okay friends, one of the first things we need to do to get started on this job is to go ahead and safely raise and support the car so the front wheels are off the ground. After we've done that, we're going to continue on to removing all 5 of our lug nuts and then the wheel. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to want to do with the wheel off, we're going to go ahead and spray this so it's nice and penetrated. And then we'll continue on by removing this nut and then the pinch bolt. And then we'll just go ahead and get it right out of here. So now let's follow the lower control arm up to the ride height sensor here. You're going to see that there's a mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and remove that. Now with that unattached, come this way, and we're going to remove this bolt right there. At this point, we can move this out of the way. So now that we have that out of the way, let's continue on to loosening up this bolt. Okay, that's nice and loose. Let's leave it in there though. Now let's move along to these 2 rearward bolts. Now when we go ahead and remove these bolts, I just want you to pay attention to the top. That's going to be where the captured nut is. Essentially it just has a little flippy do on it that's going to make sure it doesn't continue to spin with the bolt. So now the next thing that we're going to do is continue on by separating the ball joint from the knuckle. You can do this either with using a pickle fork that looks like this. Essentially it's just going to come right in between here, and then the ball joint stud's going to go in between the 2 tongs. Or if you don't have one, just hit right along here with your hammer until it separates. It's starting to separate. Now with a little bit of leverage, let's go ahead and get this ball joint out of here. So now the next thing we're going to do is carefully put a jack right underneath the transmission. We want to just barely put a tiny bit amount of pressure so it's holding it. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to remove this bolt. So now we're just going to carefully rock the engine a little bit. That's going to give us a teeny bit more room. I'm just going to go ahead and punch this bolt right out of here. There it is, friends. So now it's going to be time to go ahead and get our brand new control arm in here. Something that I want you to pay attention to is this upper area where this is going to go above the subframe. Looking up here, you can see where your sway bar bushings are, and you can also see the bracket. The bracket's nice and lifted up away from the subframe. The reason why that is because, of course, we need to slide this in between the subframe and the bracket itself. As we do that, we're also going to try to line this up with the hole up here. Obviously, when we're doing this, we want to be very careful not to damage our ball joint boot on the rotor as we're moving things around, so just pay special attention to that as well, of course. There we are. As you can tell, I've got the front lined up here pretty close, and then of course the back as well. Let's start putting in our bolts and not tighten anything yet. There we are. So we can go ahead and line up that hole, and now let's grab the bolt and slide it through there. Now we're going to do the same to the rearward bolts. Let's take that mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and remove that jack. Let's just use a little bit of copper never sees in the hole. Now we're just going to line these up, get a nice little push, and try to get it in there. So now it's going to be time to put in the ball joint pinch bolt. We're going to install this from the front through to the rear. Get our nut on there. And now let's bottom it out and torque it to manufacturer's specifications. Now let's go ahead and torque this to 40 foot-pounds. Now the next thing we need to do is carefully place our jack underneath the lower control arm towards the outer aspect of it. What you want to pay special attention to is this cone right here. That's the ball joint socket. You don't want to put any pressure directly on this. Carefully put your jack so it's going to be able to support this and raise it up. Just be careful because it is at an angle and it could potentially slide out. Now that I have one of my bolts up and through, let's go ahead and start this on there. We're not going to go ahead and snug it up or anything. We just want to start it so the bolt can't come back out. Now that both of those are started, let's continue on by snugging them up. Now we're going to torque these to 110 foot-pounds. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue jacking this up very carefully. Like I said, I don't want it to slide out or anything, but essentially what I want to do is simulate the fact that the wheels are actually on the ground with the body weight of the car pressing down. The reason why we're going to do that is because this bolt right here needs to be tightened while the vehicle's at ground level, essentially. But it's going to be very hard to do if you're that low to the ground in your driveway or such. So essentially, go ahead and jack this up, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten this up. Now we're going to torque this to 110 foot-pounds as well. Let's carefully remove our jack. Now let's get our ride height sensor back on here. If you were to look at the bracket, you can see it has a little hooky-doo area. That needs to essentially slide over this, and then the bolt hole is going to line up. Put it in there. That pretty much holds it for me. Let's move along to the top area. Now let's go ahead and do the part that goes on top of the control arm. You're going to see right along here, you got a little piton. That's going to fit right into the secondary hole on your control arm. And then once you get it lined up with that hole, you should have the bolt hole lined up as well. Now let's snug them up. So now that the wheel's on here, let's go ahead and bottom out the lug nuts. We'll bring the wheel down so it's just barely touching the ground, and then we'll torque these to 85 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friends, we got our control arm in there. Now all you have to do is safely get yourself down to your local alignment shop.